Make a chain, for the land is full of bloody crimes, and the city is full of violence. Wherefore I will bring the worst of the heathen, and they shall possess their houses. I will also make the pomp of the strong to cease. Their holy places shall be defiled. Destruction comes, and they shall seek peace, and there will be none. Mischief shall come upon mischief, rumor shall be upon rumor. Then shall they seek a vision of the prophet, but the law shall perish from the priest, and counsel from the ancients. The king shall mourn, the prince shall be clothed with desolation, and the hands of the people of the land shall be troubled. I will do unto them after their way, and according to their deserts will I judge them. And they shall know that I am the Eternal. How does a people come to the place where they get a message like this from God, where they are described as a land that is full of bloody crimes, and a city is full of violence, filled with it? Actually, we probably ought to know, because we are there. And we ought to be able to look back down the back trail and see how we got here. But the truth is, I don't see any evidence that we really do know. I don't see any indication that we really do understand. This particular statement comes at the end of a profoundly disturbing prophecy. It was a segment that God gave to Ezekiel. He went through all of the objections he had against Israel, why they had done what they had done, the decay of their religion. And, of course, the main reason that he makes this connection with violence and all that happened is that Ezekiel connects the decay and corruption of society into blood and to violence with the decay and the corruption of religion. That is, with the decay and the corruption of obedience to God. Very few people are willing to look in the right place for an explanation to how we as a people have come to the same pass. Or they don't look far enough. Or maybe there are even fewer people who are equipped to understand what it is that they see. In this series of sermons on the subject of Ezekiel, I've come to Ezekiel, the 8th chapter. And if you'd like to turn there with me, I'd like to introduce you to a further development. This last that I read you, in the opening of the sermon, was Ezekiel 7, verses 23 through 27. It was the end of a prophecy. Chapter 8 begins a new prophecy. It came to pass in the 6th year, the 6th month, and the 5th day of the month, as I sat in my house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, that the hand of the Lord God fell there upon me. And I beheld, and lo, a likeness like the appearance of fire. From the appearance of his loins downward, fire. From his loins upward, even as the appearance of brightness and the color of amber. And he put forth the form of a hand, and took me by a lock of my head. And the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven, and brought me in the visions of God to Jerusalem. Now you must remember, as we read our way through Ezekiel, that most of the time, Ezekiel is in vision, and we are reading an account of a vision. And consequently, things will not always be what they seem to be. They will not always seem logical. They will not follow normal sequences, because things happen in vision. Strange things happen. And there is no boundary of physical law. I mean, to pick a man up by the lock of his hair and hold him suspended between the heavens and the earth would be an odd thing indeed, physically speaking. But in vision, there's nothing particularly strange about it at all. It is symbolic what God is doing. He has picked this man up. As, even the symbolism of being picked up by your hair makes some statement. And he is carried to a place to see something. He said, he took me in the visions of God to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looks toward the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provokes to jealousy. Now, all of us know the statement, behold, Israel, the Lord your God is a jealous God. In some measure, that poses small problems for us in our line of thinking. Jealousy is an unworthy motive. We are not supposed to feel jealous. And yet, when we think about it, there are things that are our right that we can be jealous over. There is nothing particularly wrong about a woman being jealous of her husband or a man being jealous of his wife. It's appropriate that we should be jealous in that sense. There is a form of selfishness, that is, of wanting to keep my wife for myself. You could call it selfish. You could call it jealous. But there's nothing wrong with it. And indeed, where God, of course, there is a pathological jealousy. I'm not speaking of that. But when God is jealous of Israel, He is merely jealous of what is His right. And He turns around and says of them that they have placed right here in a central place right next to His sanctuary what He calls an image of jealousy that provokes Him to jealousy. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, according to the vision that I saw in the plain. Then He said to me, Son of man, lift up your eyes now the way toward the north. So I lifted up my eyes the way toward the north, and behold, northward at the gate of the altar. I mean, we're right inside the temple area of God. And right at the gate of the altar, there is this image of jealousy in the entry, right in the way, where everyone will see it, interfering, as it were, with the worship of God. What is this image of jealousy? What is it all about? How is it that it provokes God to jealousy? Well, before we can even begin to continue with this, there are some things that we need to understand. I'm sorry we won't get very far in Ezekiel today. I want you to turn back to Deuteronomy, because there is some groundwork that has to be laid here, or we're not going to understand some of the things that we are reading in chapter 8. As I said before, in one measure of speaking, there is this peculiar feeling we have, and it's almost like a justification that we have to make for God because He is jealous. And I've heard sermons and sermonettes that talked about the word jealous should be zealous, that God has a lot of zeal for Israel. But let's relax for a moment. Let's recognize it for what it is, that God is jealous, and He has every right to be jealous. And let's look and see if we can understand the roots of it and the why and the wherefore of it. In Deuteronomy chapter 4, and I want to begin reading in verse 24. Actually, I don't want to begin there. I'll back up before that. I want to begin earlier than that. I want you to come back to chapter 4, verse 1. Therefore hearken, Israel, to the statutes and the judgments which I teach you, for to do them, that you may live and go in and possess the land which the Lord God of your fathers gave you. You shall not add to the word that I command you, neither shall you diminish aught from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. This same sentiment, in a way, concludes the Bible, the book of Revelation, where it talks about adding plagues to anyone who will add anything to God's Word, about taking away the place out of the book of life to anyone who will take away anything out of God's Word. And here He says, you are not to add to the Word I've given you. You are not to diminish anything from the Word that I have given you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did because of Baal Peor. For all the men that followed Baal Peor, the Lord your God has destroyed them from among you. Is this lesson lost on you, he asks. You did see it, didn't you? You realize that those who went after another God, served another God, worshipped another God, followed another God, they're not with us anymore, are they? But you that did cleave to the Lord your God are alive, every one of you, this day. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do so in the land where you go to possess it. Therefore keep them, and do them. For this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of nations, who shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. You know, you kind of get the perspective here that God comes down and through Moses gives this people a religion. We'll use that for want of a better word at the moment. He reveals Himself to them. He gives them a set of commandments. And He goes beyond that. He gives them statutes and judgments. And, you know, judgments are decisions based upon law, decisions how to apply the law in given circumstances. And He said, when you get all these things together, these are your wisdom. Now, presumably then, if we turned our back on those statutes and judgments, we would be turning our back on wisdom. And a nation or a people or a family or an individual who loses wisdom, loses the capability of making wise decisions, loses the capability of a sound mind, is obviously going to have great difficulty in making his own life work, the lives of people around him work. It means that as a people, when wisdom departs, our leadership begins to come unglued. It means that those who would otherwise call us back to a right way, those who might give us some wisdom in our courts and our judgments, do not have it. Everything begins to come unglued. God says, through Moses, I want you to remember, and I don't want you to ever forget, that the source of your wisdom is the statutes, the law, the judgments, the commandments that I have given you. And they are so great that the people around you will look at you and look at this people and look at what you've done and said, what a wise, knowledgeable, understanding people they are. Look at how well their life works. Look at how well their economy works. Look at all the good things that happen to these people. For what nation is there so great? Who has God so nigh unto them as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon Him for? Where is there a people that has God so close, and so that when we call upon Him, He is there? Well, they had God with them in a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day. And He spoke the Ten Commandments, and He wrote them with His own finger, and He gave statutes and judgments and a whole legislative system, a judicial system, so that their life might work. Their society would work. And what nation is there so great that has statutes and judgments so righteous as all the law that I set before you this day? Only take heed to yourself and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life. But teach them to your sons and to your sons' sons. You are going to have to work hard to hang on to what I've given you. Now, in one sense of the word, you would say, well, this looks like a nation that simply had a great legislative system and a great judiciary, and that they had a good set of laws, and they should have a strong or a great society. And indeed, they should. But you also, at the same time, must remember that all this society, all this package of law and statutes and judgments was all based on religion, worship of God. And the first 4 commandments of the foundational law all had to do with who was God, who was the source of the law, who was the one who gave the direction, who was the protector. It kept them in their identity and their knowledge of God, and it kept God close to them. It's important that you keep that thought in mind. It kept God close to them. And he goes on in this particular passage to say, you'll teach them to your sons and your sons' sons. Verse 10, especially the day that you stood before the Lord your God in Horeb, when the Lord said unto me, gather the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they will live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. And you come near and stand under the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire in the midst of heaven, the darkness and clouds and thick darkness. And the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire, and you heard the voice of the words. You just saw no similitude, but you heard a voice. And he declared to you the covenant which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments. And he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might do them in the land where you go over to possess it. Take you therefore good heed to yourselves. I want you to remember something. Keep it firmly in mind. You saw no manner of similitude on the day that the Lord spoke to you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, did you? You didn't see a shape. You did not see a face. You didn't see arms or hands. You saw no similitude. Lest you said, you don't have any of those things. You heard his voice, and you heard the commandments, but you didn't see him. Beware lest you corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image, the similitude of any figure, the likeness of male or female. Because you see, to whatever extent you create an image in your mind, to whatever extent you have an idea of a face or of a beard or of eyes or of color or a shape of nose or of hair, to whatever extent you have an image at all, it is wrong. And the firmer the image, the more wrong it is. The clearer the image, the further it is from the truth. Because as you lock in an image, it cannot be God. Therefore, it must be something else. He said, you're not to do it with the figure of any male or female, the likeness of any beast on earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that's in the waters beneath the earth. Unless you lift up your eyes into heaven, and you see the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and the hosts of heaven, lest you should be driven to worship them and serve them, which nations all around them had done, which people from time immemorial had done. He said, no, that's not me either. The sun coming up, and it's rising, and it's incredible. You know, you can stand out on even a cold day if you're in the sun, and you can feel the warmth coming from 93 million miles away. The sun is not God. The moon is not God. Stars out there, the ones you see, are not angels. Symbolically, we use the word, but that's not angels. Those are more suns out there. He said, even all the hosts of heaven, lest you be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord your God has divided to all nations under the whole heaven. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance, as you are this day. Moses speaking says, furthermore, the Lord was angry with me for your sake, and swore that I would not go over Jordan, and I should not go into that good land which the Lord your God has given you for an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not go over Jordan, but you shall go over and possess that good land. It seems so serious for such a minor thing that Moses did, where he said, must I bring water forth out of this rock? But you see, God told him to just simply speak to the rock. He struck the rock. God said, I will bring forth water out of the rock. Moses said to the people, must I bring forth water out of the rock? Not even Moses was to be somehow an image of God to these people. As great a man as he was, as great a leader as he was, Moses had to be kept in perspective in their minds. And God was not going to allow him to become a God. He was not going to allow them to build a monument over Moses' grave and come and worship Moses. Not even Moses was allowed to have that kind of honor. God says, I am the Lord, and I will share my glory with none other. There's a reason for this. Jealousy. That goes far beyond your jealousy or my jealousy or petty envy or the things that we feel. There is something far more important than that. Take heed to yourselves lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God which he made with you, and you make you a graven image or the likeness of anything which the Lord your God has forbidden you. Verse 24. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. Now, if you have in your mind the image of a jealous husband, hold on to it. Hold on to it. Because that doesn't even begin to be a patch on the feelings that God has concerning his people, whom he loved, whom he protected, whom he rescued, whom he brought out of Egypt, whom he married, in a sense, and to whom he became a husband. It doesn't even begin to touch it. But it's not a selfish jealousy. It's a jealousy of right. A jealousy to which God has every right. Remember this. When you beget children and children's children, and when you have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves and make a graven image. You know, it's funny the way he puts this. He doesn't say, if you will do it. He says, if the translation is correct, and I have no reason to think it isn't, when you beget children and grandchildren, and you have remained a long time in the land, when you shall corrupt yourselves and make a graven image, or the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord God to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day. You shall soon utterly perish from off the land. If you do as a people begin to forget me, rather when you do, and when you begin to put other gods in the place of me, make up your mind to it. You will perish utterly from off the land. Now, oughtn't we to take that to heart? It was said a long time ago. It was said to some people in the Middle East, back down in the Sinai, back down across Jordan before they ever went into the land. It was said to these people at that time. But should we not heed that? Because after all, it was not those people really who did it. It was their grandchildren, or maybe great-grandchildren finally, who really began to do this. The warning was for them and for any people whose God is the Lord, and who then turn away from God. I call heaven and earth to witness, you shall utterly perish off the land whereunto you go over Jordan to possess it. You will not prolong your days upon it. You shall utterly be destroyed. And the Lord will scatter you among the nations. You shall be left few in number among the heathen, where the Lord shall lead you. Now, this is early. This is really early. This is the speech of Moses before Moses is dead, telling them what's going to happen in terms of that they will forsake God, they will go into idolatry, and they will go out into captivity among the heathen. It is the most consistent prophetic message down through all history. And it's going to turn out to be just as valid now as it was when it was originally spoken. There you shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. You know, there's a poetic irony in this. He said, you want to serve other gods. You know, you want to serve other nations' gods. You want to follow all these other customs. Very well. You will go into captivity, and there you will serve these gods. You'll serve them in hard bondage. The work of men's hands, which don't see, they don't hear, they don't eat, they don't smell. But if from thence you shall seek the Lord your God, you shall find him, if only you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. Even from there. It's this little passage of Scripture that's taken for the beautiful air out of Mendelssohn's Elijah. If with all your heart you truly seek me, you shall surely find me, saith your God. When you are in tribulation and all these things have come upon you, even in the latter days, if you will turn to the Lord your God, and if you will be obedient to his voice, for the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not forsake you. He will not destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, which he spoke unto them. For ask now for the days that are past, which were before you, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and ask from one side of heaven to the other, whether there has been any such thing as this great thing, or has ever been heard like it. Did ever people hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire like you did, and live? Or has God essayed to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation? Has it ever happened again since? Where else has it ever been? Look and see. Try and find it. This is it, where a God has gone and taken him a people. By temptations and signs and wonders, and by war, and by a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and great terrors, according to all that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes. It was shown to you that you might know that the Lord is God. There is none else beside him. Out of heaven he made you to hear his voice, that he might instruct you. And upon earth he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers, because God loved your fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and brought you out of his sight with his mighty power out of Egypt. I believe that the truth is that it's because God loved our fathers that we have this beautiful land that we live in today, the prosperity that we are able to enjoy, and which we seem as a people to be systematically trying to destroy. When has it ever happened? God loved you to drive out nations before you, greater and mightier than you are, to bring you in, to give you their land for an inheritance, as it is this day. And of course, we came into this, and there was a people much more numerous than we were as we came in before we were here. And God allowed us to drive them out as well. Know therefore this day, and consider it in your heart, that the Lord, he is God, in the heaven above, and upon the earth beneath, and there is none else. Now, you and I would probably think, well, that's a foregone conclusion. How could anyone consider otherwise? How could this possibly be? Well, let's continue, and maybe we will come to understand it as we continue. You shall keep, therefore, his statutes and his commandments, which I command you this day, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days upon the earth which the Lord your God gives you forever. Boy, now that's a message. And it's a warning that you would think people would listen to and heed and ponder deeply. Then he recounts the Ten Commandments in chapter 5. I think it might be worth us taking just a moment to read this particular account of Deuteronomy, beginning in verse 6, particularly of the first 4 commandments. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. The first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me. The second commandment, you shall not make any graven image of any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, in the earth beneath, on the waters beneath the earth. You shall not bow down yourself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, showing mercy to thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. And you shall keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. The 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you nor your son nor your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, your ox, your ass, any of your cattle, your stranger that's within your gates, that your manservant and your maidservant can rest like you do. And remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm. Therefore the Lord your God commands you to keep the Sabbath day. The reason behind the Sabbath is different. In Exodus 20, it's worded differently, and the implications of it are different, but this is the one given that Moses recounts on this particular occasion. Now, let's say there are some things, I think, in the root of all this that are critical, and they are, all of them, in the earliest times. In the 31st chapter, I believe of Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy chapter 31, and beginning in verse 9 this time. And Moses wrote this law and delivered it to the priests, the sons of Levi, that bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and all the elders of Israel. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, at the solemnity of the year of release in the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel is come to appear before the Lord your God, in the place which he shall choose, you shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. And it's something, you think about it. Every 7 years, instead of get them all lined up, they all would be standing when they did it, and somebody would stand up where they're hearing of the people, and they would read this law aloud for them to hear it. Gather the people together, men, women, children, stranger, that they may hear, that they may learn, and fear the Lord your God, and observe to do all the words of this law, and that their children, which have not known anything, may hear and learn to fear the Lord your God as long as you live in the land, whether you go over Jordan to possess it. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, the days approach that you have to die. Call Joshua, and present yourselves in the tabernacle of the congregation, that I may give Joshua a charge. So Moses and Joshua went, they presented themselves there. And the Lord appeared in the tabernacle in a pillar of a cloud, and the pillar of the cloud stood over the door of the tabernacle. And the Lord said to Moses, now, God is speaking. Moses has recounted for us before his death, they put them down on paper, or I presume on parchment, I should say, the words that God spoke. Moses, he said, behold, you shall sleep with your fathers, and this people will rise up and go a-whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land, whither they go to be among them. And they will forsake me, and they will break my covenant which I have made with them. It is going to happen. Then my anger will be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. So they will say in that day, are not these evils come upon us, because our God not among us? Yeah, that's right. The people will finally come to realize it. Aren't these things happening because our God is not among us? Well, then why is he not among us? I will surely hide my face in that day for all the evils that they have wrought, in that they have turned to other gods. Now, therefore, write you this song for you, and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. Now, this is a strange thing in a way. God is about to give Moses a song. And Moses will sit down and he'll write the whole thing out, and it's called the Song of Moses. I've read it before, but for some reason I had not focused in on it quite in the way I did this morning as I was reading through this passage. And I began to realize, first of all, I looked upon it as the Song of Moses, and somehow I had overlooked that God had said, behold, I'm going to give you this song. And the song is prophetic. It is simply because when the people get into the land, they are going a-whoring after other gods, to use his word. They will do it. Now, from my perspective, I have great difficulty in seeing that would be in their future. But then I would have had a hard time understanding how a people who had walked dry-shod across the bottom of the Red Sea, with Moses standing up there, parting the whole thing, I would have a hard time understanding how these people could ever argue with him about anything. We were slaves. He got us out of there. We walked dry-shod across the bottom of the sea. I saw a pillar of fire by night and a cloud by day, and we followed that thing. I have trouble with it. But it happened. It happened. They did go after all these other gods. You figure it. So he says to Moses, we're going to write a song. And you're going to teach it to them so that they can sing this song. For when I shall have brought them into the land which I swore to their fathers, that flows with milk and honey, and they shall have eaten and filled themselves and gotten fat, then they will turn to other gods, and they will serve them, and they will provoke me, and they will break my covenant. It shall come to pass, when many evils and troubles are befallen them, that this song shall testify against them as a witness. It shall not be forgotten out of the mouths of their seed, for I know their imagination, which they go about. Even now, before I brought them into the land that I spoke, their imagination is already at work. So there's no reason to assume that it's not going to come to pass. I already know what their imagination is doing. Moses therefore wrote this song the same day and taught it to the children of Israel. He gave Joshua the son of Nun a charge and said, be strong and of good courage, for you will bring the children of Israel into the land which I swore to them, and I will be with you. It came to pass, when Moses had made an end of writing the words of the law in the book until they were finished, he commanded the Levites which bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, saying, take this book of the law and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, that it may be there for a witness against thee. For I know your rebellion. I know your stiff neck. Behold, while I am yet alive with you this day, you have been rebellious against the Lord, and how much more after my death. Gather all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their ears, and call heaven and earth to record this day against them. For I know that after my death you will utterly corrupt yourselves and turn aside from the way that I have commanded you. There are overtures in this, or are echoes in this, of what Paul said to the Ephesian elders. I know that after my departing, grievous wolves are going to enter in among you, not sparing the flock. And of your own selves, men will arise speaking perverse things to draw away disciples after them. I know, Paul said. Moses said, I know. God, of course, saw the imagination of their heart. Paul had plenty of reason to see the imaginations of their heart. And Paul probably even had an idea in his mind of which of the Ephesian elders it might have been. He could have. We really have no way of knowing. He said, I know you're going to do this, and evil will befall you in the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. And Moses spoke in the ears of all the congregation of Israel the words of this song until they were ended. What's the song? Well, here it is in chapter 32. Give ear, O you heavens, and I will speak. And hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. My doctrine shall drop like the rain. My speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass, fresh and green and causing it to grow. because I will publish the name of Yahweh. Ascribe you greatness unto our God. He is the rock. His work is perfect. For all his ways are judgment. A God of truth and without iniquity. Just and upright is he. They have corrupted themselves. Their spot is not the spot of his children. They are a perverse and a crooked generation. I won't try to read it all. Pass on down to verse 9. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land, in the waste, howling wilderness. He led him about. He instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up her nest and flutters about the young and spreads abroad her wing and takes them and bears them on her wings. So the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. When I brought you out of Egypt, God says, I alone did it. There was no other God standing at my right hand or left hand or somebody helping me along the way to make this work. I alone did this. He made Israel ride on the high places of the earth that he might eat the increase of the field. He made him suck honey out of the rock and oil out of the flinty rock, butter of kine, milk of sheep, fat of lambs, rams of the breed of Bashan, goats with the fat of kidneys of wheat. And you did drink the pure blood of the grape. But Jeshurun waxed fat and kicked. You are waxed fat. You are grown thick. You are covered with fat. Then he forsook God, which made him, and lightly esteemed the God of his salvation. You know what this is talking about? It's saying that the more prosperity, it isn't just talking about being overweight. It's talking about all the prosperity that came upon Israel. They became socially, or as a nation, or as a people, they became fat. Their whole mindset was fat. And he said they lightly esteemed the rock of their salvation. They just treated him as a light, or relatively unimportant, or a not of great importance. They provoked him to jealousy. Here's this concept again. This image of jealousy that provokes, that Ezekiel spoke about. It says they provoked him to jealousy with strange gods. This is going on right from the beginning. It is seen right from the beginning. It actually was working in their imagination while the people were still in the wilderness wanderings. It was there. He said, oh, it will happen. They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods, with abominations. They provoked him to anger. They sacrificed to devils. This is not merely a matter, it seems, of having gotten involved in the religious belief of just something that was carved out of rock, that had no substance or nothing behind it at all. The implication is that these pieces of wood and stone and carved idols all were representations of something else. That indeed they were worshiping devils when they made their sacrifices, not God, and to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers never feared. Of the rock that begat you, you are unmindful. You have forgotten God that formed you. And when the Lord saw it, he abhorred them, because of the provoking of his sons and of his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their evil end shall be. For they are a perverse generation, children in whom is no faith. They have moved me to jealousy. There's that word again. They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities. And I will move them to jealousy with those who are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. This is cited by Paul in Romans 10 as one of the reasons why the Gentiles were allowed to come into the kingdom of God. For a fire is kindled in mine anger, and shall burn unto the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains. This is really serious. I will heap mischiefs upon them. I will spend my arrows upon them. They shall be burnt with hunger, and devoured with burning heat and bitter destruction. I will send the teeth of beasts upon them, the poison of serpents of the dust. You know, you'd think a person would read this and say, you know, it might not be a bad idea if I just really did what God said. This idea of chasing after some other form of religion or other way of doing things may not be as wise as I thought it was. This is the consequences of ignoring God, of rejecting his religion. The sword without, terror within, shall destroy both the young man and the virgin, the suckling, and the man with gray hairs. I said, I will scatter them to the corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease among men. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversaries should behave themselves strangely, and lest they should say, Our land is high, and the Lord has not done this. For they are a nation void of counsel. There isn't any understanding in them. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would consider their latter end. But wisdom, you see, is gone. Why is wisdom gone? Because the source of wisdom was the law of God. And when they turned their back on the law of God, wisdom went with it. It's as simple as that. There is a source of wisdom. And when you have that, you have it. And when you turn your back on it, you don't. And when wisdom goes, so does prosperity. When wisdom goes, so does health. When wisdom goes, so does safety. And in the door comes crime and murder and blood and violence. It's a simple matter of cause and effect. How should one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight, except their rock had sold them and the Lord had shut them up? You know, how could you suffer the way you have done? With all that you have, with all your power, with all your numbers, with all your machinery, how could all this happen to you? Except that I had turned my back on you, and that I had weakened you, and I had left you, and I was no longer with you. For their rock is not like our rock, even our enemies themselves being judges. Their vine is the vine of Sodom in the fields of Gomorrah. Sodomy is rife in that land. This seems to all be tied in together. It isn't explained, but it is there, and it crops up again and again in the history of Israel. As the idolatry increases, so the sodomy increases, and they seem to parallel one another almost like a religion. Their wine is like the poison of dragons and the cruel venom of asps. That's a shocking thing in a way, but when it talks about their vine is the vine of Samorah, their grapes are grapes of gall, there was the connection of the wine coming from the Sodom, and then the poison that comes with it is the poison of asps. It's a deadly thing. We in our generation have more reason to understand that from sodomy than from any previous generation that has ever been. Is not this laid up in store with me and sealed among my treasures? To me belongs vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time, for the end of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste. For the Lord shall judge his people, and repent himself for his servants, when he sees that their power is gone, that there is none shut up or left. And he shall say, Where are their gods? Where is their rock in whom they trusted? They had religion. They had a church. They had a worship. Where's that God? Where is their God? Where is their religion? Why has it failed them so badly? Why is their society coming apart? Why have they been beaten by their enemies? Why is it that 1,000 of them flee before 2 or 3 men? These people who did eat the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offerings, let them rise up. Let them help you. Let them be there for your protection. See now that I, even I, am he, and there is no God with me. I kill, and I make alive. I wound, and I heal. Neither is there any who can deliver out of my hand. When God Almighty sets his hand to do something, you might as well expect it. It's coming. There is no deliverance. There is no hiding place. There's no place to go. There's no other God to run to protect you. He said there isn't any that can deliver you out of my hand. I'm glad. I'm glad now. I'm glad that is true as long as I am obedient to God. I don't think I would be that enthusiastic about it if I were in a position of those who had turned their back on it. For I will lift up my hand to heaven and say, I live forever. If I whet my glittering sword, and my hand take hold on judgment, I will render vengeance to my enemies and reward them that hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood. My sword shall devour flesh, and that with the blood of the slain and of the captives from the beginning of revenges upon the enemy. Rejoice, O you nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants, and will render vengeance to his adversaries, and will be merciful unto his land and unto his people. And Moses came after the song, and spoke to all the words of the song in the ears of the people, he and Hoshea the son of Nun. And Moses made an end of speaking all these words unto the people. He said to them, set your hearts unto all the words that I testify among you this day. Verse 47, for it is not a vain thing for you, because it is your life. And through this thing you shall prolong your days in the land. You know, I think what he's saying, when he says, set your heart to these words, I think he is saying, set these words to heart. In other words, memorize this song. Because it's going to be your life. It's going to save your neck. It's going to keep you mindful of who is God and who is not. And make you realize that you cannot turn your back on God and prosper. It just isn't going to work. Now, you begin to understand, through what I've been going in here for a little while, this concept of jealousy, and an image of jealousy. And what Ezekiel has said, what he has raised as a question as he goes along, is the presence of an image right in the very temple of God. This one is not in the Holy of Holies. This one is right out where, right in front of where the altar is, but the effect is very much the same. It is one of provoking God to jealousy. Now, this pattern it's a very old one, and it has found a lot of repetition in ancient Israel. Turn down to 1 Kings chapter 14, if you would, for one particular little fill-in or instance on it. Chapter 14, and beginning in verse 21 of 1 Kings. Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Lord did choose out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. His mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonitess. In other words, she was a Gentile. And Judah did evil in the sight of the Lord. They provoked him to jealousy, which their sins which they had committed above all that their fathers had done. This is the prophecy that God gave, to Moses, that is encompassed in the Song of Moses, and here it is, all beginning to come to pass. They built high places, they built images and groves on every high hill and under every green tree, and these are all references to pagan practices. There were also sodomites in the land, and they did according to all the abominations of the nations which the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel. The pattern had already begun. This is just one of many repetitions of the pattern as it developed. Turn back to 2 Kings, to another instance of it. These are merely to just give you a feeling for the repetitious nature of it throughout the period of time of the history of both Judah and of the 10 northern tribes of Israel. 2 Kings chapter 21. Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hephzibah. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, after the abominations of the heathen whom the Lord cast out. He built again the high places, which Hezekiah his father had destroyed. An earlier king built them up. Hezekiah came along and tore them down. Manasseh came along and built them back up. Why in the world they do these things? How can they do these things? How can they persistently, after, going through these cycles of ups and downs, continue to turn their back on God? He built again the high places, which his father had destroyed. He reared up altars for Baal and made a grove, as did Ahab, king of Israel, and worshipped all the host of heaven, which God said, you'll do it. They worshipped the moon, the stars, the sun. And he built altars in the house of the Lord, of which the Lord said, in Jerusalem I will put my name. He built altars for all the host of heaven in the 2 courts of the house of God. More altars around here. An altar for the sun, an altar for the moon, an altar for the constellations of the stars. He made his son to pass through the fire. Do you know what this is? It's infant sacrifice. The firstborn son was killed and burnt to the god Moloch. He made his son pass through the fire. He observed times and used enchantments and dealt with familiar spirits and wizards. He brought all sorts of the occult and strange things and demon worship right straight into the house of God. He wrought much wickedness in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. There is almost in some of this the suggestion of deliberate provocation. And in Manasseh's case, that may have been true. In the case of most of the people who went along with all this, I don't think many of them realized, some cases, the implications of what was happening. He set a graven image in the grove that he had made in the house of which the Lord said to David and Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever. Neither will I make the feet of Israel move any more out of the land which I gave their fathers,
only if they will observe to do according to all that I have commanded them, according to the law that my servant Moses commanded them. But they didn't listen. Manasseh seduced them to do more evil than the nations before whom the Lord had destroyed before the children of Israel. And so the messages come from the prophets. Verse 12, therefore thus saith the Lord God of Israel, behold, I am bringing such evil upon Jerusalem and Judah, that whoever hears it, both of his ears will tingle. I will stretch over Jerusalem the line of Samaria, the plummet of the house of Ahab, which means they were destroyed. You will be too. I will wipe Jerusalem like a man wipes a dish, wiping it, turning it upside down. And I will forsake the remnant of my inheritance and deliver them into the hand of their enemies, and they shall become a prey and a spoil to all their enemies, because they have done that which was evil in my sight, and have provoked me to anger since the day that their fathers came forth out of Egypt, even unto this day. Moreover, Manasseh shed innocent blood very much until he had filled Jerusalem from one end to the other, figuratively speaking. He had just filled the city with innocent blood. Violence on top of violence on top of violence. You know, you wonder, well, what's the connection between this turning away from God and this incredible, bloody violence and corruption that besets a people? Well, it's a complex question, and there are many facets to the answer. But I'd like for you to turn back with me to Zephaniah, a rather obscure prophecy, in case you have a little bit of trouble finding him. He's right after Habakkuk. How's that for giving you some help? Zephaniah, chapter 1, and verse 1. The word of the Lord which came to Zephaniah, the son of Cushai, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, and the son of Hizkiah, in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah. Placed it in Josiah's reign. Now, Josiah was a king who instigated great reforms. He says, I will utterly consume all things from off the land, saith the Lord. Now, you talk about tough words. First words out of this prophet's mouth, no preamble, no nothing, are, thus I will utterly consume all things from off the land, saith the Lord. I will consume man and beast. I will consume fowls of the heaven, fishes of the sea, stumbling blocks with the wicked. I will cut off man from the land, saith the Lord. I will stretch out my hand upon Judah, upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem. I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, and the name of the Chemarim with the priests. Chemarim is a word which basically carries the idea of being black-robed, and they were ascetics. They were monks of their day. In the name of the Chemarim with the priests, and them that worship the host of heaven upon the housetops, and them that worship and swear by the Lord, and that swear by Malcham, and them that are turned back from the Lord, and those that have not sought the Lord nor inquired of him. Hold your peace at the presence of the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is at hand. Oops. Now, are we really still back in the days of Josiah? Is this vision only a thing for the history? He said, hold your peace at the presence of the Lord God, for the day of the Lord is at hand. The Lord has prepared a sacrifice. You know what that language is? That's the same language of Revelation 19, where it talks about the time of the very end and the battle of Armageddon, and the Lord's great sacrifice, where he calls all the ravens and all the birds of prey to come to eat the flesh of kings and captains. It shall come to pass in the day of the Lord's sacrifice. I will punish the princes and the king's children, and all such as are clothed with strange apparel. What in the world does that mean? All such who are clothed with strange apparel. There's a curious thing about this. Back in 2 Kings, I won't turn to it, chapter 10, is an instance where Jehu is in the process of cleaning house on idolatry in Israel. And he told them to get all the priests of Baal together with their vestments. In other words, they had a particular kind of clothing that they had to wear. And here he says, I'm going to punish all the princes, and in some cases the priests were referred to as princes, and the king's children, and everyone who is clothed with strange apparel. Now, if your Bible has marginal references, you may find one in the margin of that. Mine does. It has Matthew 22 and verse 11. Fascinating. Now, you have heard the parable of the man who had prepared a great wedding supper for his son. You know, he got everything all ready, and he commanded the people to come, and they wouldn't. And then he sent for more people, and they made excuses, and they wouldn't come. Finally goes out to the highways and byways and compels them to come in. And he finally furnishes the whole wedding with guests. As he comes in, he finds one man that was there without a wedding garment on. He said, "Friend, what are you doing here without a wedding garment on?" And the man doesn't have anything to say, speechless, it says. He says, "Take him and cast him into outer darkness." What's that all about? You realize it wasn't so much, I think, the fact that he merely did not have on a wedding garment. He was wearing the wrong garment. Now, what does this mean? Well, you see, so much of the worship that we do, so much of the things that we understand as being wrong, these mixtures of worship where you have all of the paraphernalia, all of the imagery, all of the symbolism of the winter solstice, of the time of the rebirth of the sun and the sun god, the birthday of the Sol Invictus of the invisible sun. All of these things, all of these are all taken and put on Jesus Christ and called Christmas. In other words, you clothe your religion with a vestment which doesn't belong. It's the clothing of Baal and his worship. And it's put upon people who think that they are worshiping God. You know, Christmas and Easter are really innocent as far as any direct thing that you see. You know, the putting of presents under the tree, the sharing of gifts, the boiling of eggs and painting your little eggs and going out and hiding them for children to find. These things are all so innocent. Getting up at sunrise and going out on a peak somewhere when the sun is coming up in the east to recognize the resurrection of Jesus Christ all seems so simple and so innocent. But you're wearing the wrong clothes. Your religion is clothed wrong. It's the wrong vestment. Doesn't look right to God. It's not what He intended and not what He commanded. And the problem, you see, is not merely Christmas. It's not merely Easter. It's not merely these wrong garments. The problem is the abandonment of the religion that underlies the law, that underlies your wisdom, that shows you a right way of life, the way to build a truly great society, the way to have a good life, the way to have a happy family, the way to make your life work. He said, you have systematically, as a people, turned your back on all of this and have gone away backwards. I want you to come back with me to Ezekiel. As I told you, we wouldn't be getting very far in it today, and my word is going to be good in that regard. The 8th chapter of Ezekiel, I had read down to verse 5. Then he said to me, Son of man, lift up your eyes now toward the north. So I lifted up my eyes toward the way of the north, and behold, northward at the gate of the altar, this image of jealousy at the entry. He said furthermore to me, Son of man, do you see what they do? Do you see the great abominations that the house of Israel commits here? That I should go far off from my sanctuary. You see what they're doing? They're doing all these things so that I would go away. And then when I go away, what do you think is going to happen then?